After losing his son to an incurable disease, a millionaire collapses outside a hospital. As he walks aimlessly, a little girl stops him with a light touch and a cryptic warning. "Tomorrow you can't go to the funeral and bring me a photo of Auntie. Your son." Without understanding why, he obeys, and what he discovers will surprise you. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to like this video, and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Alexander Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 47th floor of Sterling Pharmaceuticals, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the sprawling cityscape below. The golden light of sunset painted the glass towers in warm hues, but he felt none of that warmth in his heart. His Italian leather shoes sank into the plush carpet as he paced, his Patek Philippe watch marking each precious second that slipped away. The quarterly reports spread across his mahogany desk showed record-breaking profits, yet another testament to his business acumen. Under normal circumstances, this would have been cause for celebration. Instead, the numbers seemed to mock him, reminder of how meaningless financial success could be. His phone buzzed for the third time in the past hour. Another message from his ex-wife, Catherine. He didn't need to read it to know what it said. Their son, Tommy, had asked for him again during the latest round of treatments at Memorial Children's Hospital. The thought of his 12-year-old boy, once so full of life and mischief, now confined to a hospital bed, sent a sharp pain through his chest. "Mr. Sterling?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The board is waiting in the conference room." Alexander straightened his tie, a gesture so automatic he barely registered doing it. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes." He gathered the reports, his movements precise and controlled, just like everything else in his life. Everything except what mattered most. The latest experimental treatment for Tommy's condition had cost nearly $2 million, but money had never been the issue. With a net worth of over $3 billion, Alexander could afford any treatment, any specialist, any medical facility in the world. What he couldn't buy was a cure. The walk to the conference room felt longer than usual. Employees nodded respectfully as he passed, their expressions a mixture of admiration and fear. Alexander Sterling was known for his brilliant strategic mind and uncompromising standards. Few knew about the private battles he fought, the nights spent researching medical journals, or the countless hours sitting beside a hospital bed, holding his son's hand while pretending to read earnings reports. The Phase 3 trials for Nurex are showing promising results, Dr. Jenkins, the head of research and development, was saying as Alexander entered the conference room. 10 pairs of eyes turned to him, but he barely noticed. His mind was already racing ahead to his evening schedule. Board meeting until 6:30, quick dinner meeting with Chinese investors at 7 bar, then straight to the hospital where Tommy was, waiting. "Show me the data," Alexander said, taking his seat at the head of the table. The familiar rhythm of business decisions offered a temporary escape from his personal struggles. Here, in this room, he was still in control. Here, his money and influence still held power. As presentations and discussions flowed around him, Alexander's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Catherine, it was the hospital. His heart rate spiked, but his face remained impassive as he glanced at the message. Tommy's condition had taken an unexpected turn. The new treatment wasn't working as hoped. "Excuse me," he said, rising abruptly. The room fell silent. "Dr. Jenkins, continue with the presentation. I'll review the minutes later." No one dared question his departure. The clicking of his shoes echoed through the marble-floored corridor as he strode toward the elevator. In the polished metal doors, his reflection showed a man at the height of professional success. Tailored suit, commanding presence, not a hair out of place. But his eyes told a different story. The drive to Memorial Children's Hospital was a blur of traffic lights and honking horns. Alexander's driver, James, knew better than to attempt conversation. They'd made this journey so many times over the past year that the route was embedded in their minds. The hospital's familiar antiseptic smell hit him as he stepped out of the elevator onto the pediatric floor. Nurses and doctors nodded in recognition. He'd spent enough time here to become a familiar face. Outside Tommy's room, he paused, taking a deep breath to compose himself. Through the window, he could see his son's small form in the bed, surrounded by beeping machines and blinking monitors. Catherine was already there, of course. Her accusing eyes met his as he entered the room. The words didn't need to be spoken. Where were you? But Alexander's attention was focused entirely on Tommy, whose pale face lit up at the sight of his father. Dad. Tommy's voice was weak, but enthusiastic. Did you bring it? Alexander managed a smile, reaching into his briefcase to pull out the latest Superman comic they'd been reading together. Of course I did, buddy. Wouldn't forget our standing appointment. The meeting with Tommy's medical team left Alexander feeling hollow. Words like experimental treatment and limited options echoed in his mind as he wandered the streets surrounding the hospital, his tie loosened and jacket slung over his arm. The setting sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk, matching his dark mood. For the first time in his life, Alexander Sterling felt utterly powerless. His phone had been buzzing incessantly, board members, investors, Catherine, but he ignored them all. The crisp autumn air bit at his skin, a sensation he barely registered. How could all his success, all his wealth and influence mean nothing in the face of his son's illness? Sometimes the answers we seek aren't found in numbers and charts. The voice was so soft he almost missed it. Alexander turned to find a small girl, no more than 10 years old, standing nearby. She wore a simple blue dress and had dark curly hair tied back with a ribbon. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. They seemed to hold wisdom far, beyond her years. "Excuse me," he said, thrown off balance by her unexpected presence and even more unexpected words. The girl took a step closer, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Your son," she said. "He needs more than medicine." Alexander felt his breath catch in his throat. He hadn't mentioned Tommy to anyone on the street. "How did you—" "Listen carefully," the girl interrupted, her voice taking on an urgent tone. "Tomorrow morning, don't go to the hospital. Bring a picture of your son to the old carousel in Central Park instead. Find me there at sunrise." "What? Why would I—" But even as he began to question her, something in those knowing eyes made him pause. The girl reached out and touched his arm, and for a moment, Alexander felt a strange sensation, like static electricity running through his body. "Trust me, Mr. Sterling, some things are more important than board meetings and quarterly reports." Before he could respond, the girl turned and walked away, disappearing around a corner. Alexander stood frozen for several seconds, then rushed to follow her. But when he reached the corner, she was nowhere to be seen. The street was empty, except for a few commuters hurrying home. Back in his penthouse apartment that evening, Alexander couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. The girl's words played on repeat in his thoughts as he poured himself a drink he didn't really want. The city, lights twinkled beyond his windows, but he barely noticed their beauty. His phone rang. Catherine again. This time he answered. "Alexander, we need to talk about Tommy's treatment options," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "The doctors want to try a new protocol, but they need your signature on the papers first thing tomorrow morning." He closed his eyes, remembering the girl's strange warning. I can't make it tomorrow morning. There's something I need to do." "Something you need to do?" Catherine's voice rose in disbelief. "What could possibly be more important than being there for your son?" The question hit him like a physical blow because he had no rational answer. How could he explain to his ex-wife that he was following the advice of a mysterious child he'd met on the street? It sounded crazy even in his own mind. "Trust me, Catherine. Just this once, please trust that I'm doing what needs to be done for Tommy." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds before Catherine spoke again, her voice cold. "Fine. Do whatever you think is best. You always do anyway." After she hung up, Alexander walked to his home office and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a photo album he rarely looked at anymore. The memories were too painful. But now he flipped through it with purpose until he found what he was seeking. A picture of Tommy from last summer before his illness took hold. In the photo, his son was grinning widely, holding up a trophy from his Little League championship game. Alexander slipped the photo into his wallet, then spent the next hour researching everything he could find about the old carousel in Central Park. It had been there for over a century, but nothing in its history suggested anything extraordinary. Still, as he finally lay down to sleep that night, he set his alarm for sunrise. The practical, business-minded part of him insisted this was foolish. He should be at the hospital, signing papers and discussing treatment options. But something deeper, something he couldn't explain, told him the girl's words held importance. As he drifted off to sleep, her eyes haunted his dreams, those ancient eyes in a child's face, holding secrets he both feared and needed to understand. Dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold as Alexander approached the carousel in Central Park. The morning mist clung to the ground, wrapping around the vintage attraction like a protective shroud. The ornate horses, frozen in their eternal gallop, cast long shadows across the dewy grass. His polished shoes were already damp from the morning grass, his usual pristine appearance slightly disheveled from a night of restless sleep. The photo of Tommy felt heavy in his breast pocket, like a weight pressing against his heart. The rational part of his mind still screamed that this was madness, standing in an empty park at sunrise, waiting for a mysterious child based on what could have been nothing more than a stress-induced hallucination. "You came," the soft voice startled him. The girl appeared beside him so suddenly he wondered if she'd been there all along, somehow hidden in the morning mist. She wore the same blue dress as yesterday, her dark curls dancing in the gentle breeze. "I need answers," Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. "How did you know about my son?" The girl's ancient eyes studied him for a long moment. "Show me the picture," she said, extending her small hand. Alexander hesitated before reaching into his pocket and withdrawing the photograph. The sight of Tommy's smiling face, so full of life and joy, made his throat tighten. The girl took the photo with reverence, her fingers tracing the edges with surprising gentleness. "Your son's spirit is strong," she said after a long moment, "but there's something holding him here, something that needs to be resolved." Her eyes met Alexander's, and he felt that same electric sensation from yesterday. "It's not just about the illness, Mr. Sterling. It's about truth and secrets and choices made long ago." "What secrets? What choices?" Alexander demanded, his patience wearing thin. "I've done everything possible to help my son. Every treatment, every specialist." "Not everything," the girl interrupted, her voice taking on an edge of steel that seemed impossible from one so young. 7 years ago, your company developed something that could have helped not just Tommy, but many children like him. Alexander felt the blood drain from his face. "What are you talking about?" "Project Helios," she said simply, and Alexander stumbled backward, as if physically struck. That name was buried in the deepest vaults of Sterling Pharmaceuticals, known only to a handful of top executives. "How could you possibly know about that?" he whispered. The girl handed the photo back to him, her expression unreadable. "My mother knew. She tried to tell the world, but your company silenced her. Now she works in a small clinic, helping those she can, while the cure that could save hundreds gathers dust in your company's archives." Memories flooded Alexander's mind. Board meetings from years ago, heated discussions about development costs versus potential profits, decisions made in the name of business efficiency. He'd been newly appointed as CEO then, determined to prove himself worthy of the position. Project Helios was deemed financially unviable, he said automatically, repeating the words from countless reports. The development costs were too high compared to the projected profits, the girl finished for him, because the condition it treated was too rare to guarantee substantial returns. But it's not so rare anymore, is it, Mr. Sterling? And now, it's your own son who needs it. Alexander felt his knees weaken. He sank onto a nearby bench, his world spinning. Project Helios had been an experimental treatment for a rare neurological condition, the same condition that now afflicted Tommy. But that had to be a coincidence. It had to be. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How do you know all this?" The girl's expression softened slightly. "My name is Lily Chen. My mother is Dr. Sarah Chen. 7 years ago, she was the lead researcher on Project Helios? After she was dismissed, she tried to continue her research independently, but without funding and resources, she trailed off, letting the implications hang in the air. Dr. Chen, Alexander repeated, the name stirring more memories. She had been brilliant, passionate about her work. He remembered her presentation to the board, her desperate attempts to convince them of the project's importance. He'd signed her termination papers himself, seeing her as a potential liability to the company's reputation. The research isn't completely lost, Lily said, pulling him from his memories. My mother kept copies of her work. She never stopped believing in it, never stopped trying to find a way to help children like Tommy. But she needs resources, Mr. Sterling. She needs the support that only someone like you can provide. If what you're saying is true, Alexander's mind was already racing ahead, calculating possibilities, resources needed, regulatory hurdles to overcome. But why didn't Dr. Chen come to me directly? Why send you? Lily's smile held a hint of sadness. Would you have listened? The great Alexander Sterling, taking a meeting with a dismissed employee. Sometimes the truth needs to find its own path to be heard. The Sterling Pharmaceuticals archives were housed in the building's sub-basement, a climate-controlled labyrinth of filing cabinets and digital servers. Alexander hadn't visited this place in years, but now he found himself scanning shelf after shelf, searching for records from 7 years ago. His hands trembled slightly as he entered his executive override code into the secure terminal. Project Helios. The files appeared on his screen, hundreds of pages of research data, clinical trials, and financial projections. Dr. Sarah Chen's name appeared throughout the documentation, her brilliant insights and methodical approach evident in every report. Alexander remembered her now, young, determined, with the same intense eyes as her daughter. Sir, his assistant's voice made him jump. The board is asking about this morning's missed meeting. Should I reschedule? Cancel all my meetings for today, Alexander said, his eyes fixed on the screen, and get me everything you can find on Dr. Sarah Chen's current whereabouts. Hours passed as Alexander immersed himself in the research. The more he read, the more his stomach churned. Project Helios had shown incredible promise in early trials. Dr. Chen's approach had been revolutionary, a targeted therapy that could potentially halt and even reverse the progression of certain neurological conditions, the very condition that was now ravaging Tommy's body. His phone buzzed, a text from Catherine. Tommy's asking for you. Where are you? Alexander closed his eyes, guilt washing over him, but he couldn't stop now. He had to know the truth. The financial reports told a cold, calculated story. Project Helios would have required extensive clinical trials, regulatory approvals, and manufacturing setup. The potential market was estimated at fewer than 10,000 patients worldwide. The projected return on investment was deemed insufficient to justify the development costs. It was just business, he whispered to himself, but the words tasted bitter in his mouth. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom again. Sir, I found Dr. Chen. She works at the Hope Medical Clinic in Brooklyn. It's a small non-profit facility specializing in rare pediatric conditions. Alexander was already gathering his things. Get me the address. The Hope Medical Clinic was a stark contrast to Sterling Pharmaceuticals' gleaming tower. The building was old but well-maintained, with cheerful murals decorating its walls. Inside, the waiting room was filled with parents and children, some showing signs of conditions similar to Tommy's. At the reception desk, he asked for Dr. Chen. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly at his name, but she disappeared into the back without comment. Minutes later, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Sarah Chen had aged in the 7 years since he'd last seen her, but her eyes still held the same fierce intelligence. She showed no surprise at his presence. Lily said you would come, she said simply. Alexander struggled to find words. Dr. Chen, I need to understand. Project Helios. My office, she interrupted, turning on her heel. He followed her, through narrow corridors to a small room lined with medical texts and research papers. A worn desk dominated the space, its surface covered with patient files and journal articles. Your daughter, Alexander began. She's unusual. A ghost of a smile crossed Sarah's face. Lily has always been special. She sees things others don't. Understands things that should be beyond her years. She fixed him with a steady gaze. But that's not why you're here. No, Alexander agreed. I'm here because my son is sick with the same condition Project Helios was designed to treat. The same project I shut down 7 years ago. Not just shut down, Sarah corrected. You buried it. Made sure no other company would pursue the research. After all, if word got out that Sterling Pharmaceuticals had abandoned a promising treatment for a devastating illness, it might have affected your stock prices. The accusation stung, partly because he knew it was true. He'd been so focused on proving himself as CEO, on maintaining the company's profit margins and market position, that he'd lost sight of what really mattered. I was wrong, he said quietly. I made a terrible mistake. But now I need your help, the research, your work. Could it still help Tommy? Could it help all these children? Sarah studied him for a long moment. Project Helios was never just about the medicine, Mr. Sterling. It was about choosing people over profits, about remembering that behind every statistic, every market projection, there are real lives at stake. She stood and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. I've continued the research on my own, with what little resources I could gather. The original treatment protocol could work, but it would need significant refinement, clinical trials, FDA approval. Whatever it takes, Alexander said firmly. Whatever resources you need, I'll make it happen. And what happens after Tommy gets better? Sarah's voice was sharp. What about all the other children who need this treatment? Will you bury it again once your own child is safe? Alexander sat in his office late that evening, the city lights twinkling beyond his windows like distant stars. Dr. Chen's research files lay spread across his desk, each page a testament to what could have been, what should have been. His computer screen displayed an email draft to the board of directors, his cursor blinking accusingly at the end of each carefully chosen word. The door opened and Catherine walked in unannounced, her face tight with anger. You missed Tommy's treatment today. The doctors needed your signature, Alexander. Where have you been? He looked up at his ex-wife, seeing the worry lines that hadn't been there during their marriage, the exhaustion that matched his own. I found something, Catherine. Something that could change everything. What are you talking about? She moved closer, her eyes falling on the scattered papers. Project Helios, he said, watching her reaction. A treatment protocol developed by Sterling Pharmaceuticals 7 years ago. It was designed specifically for conditions like Tommy's. Catherine's expression shifted from anger to confusion. What? But if such a treatment existed, why wasn't it available when Tommy first got sick? Alexander's throat tightened. Because I shut it down. The board. We decided the profit margins weren't high enough to justify the development costs. The words felt like ashes in his mouth. The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine stared at him, her face draining of color. You had a treatment that could have helped our son, and you killed it because it wasn't profitable enough? I didn't know then that Tommy would... He trailed off, realizing how hollow his excuses sounded. I was wrong, Catherine, terribly wrong, but I'm going to fix it now. Fix it? Her laugh was bitter. How can you fix years of lost time? How? Many children suffered because of that decision, Alexander. He stood, gathering the papers with trembling hands. The researcher who developed the original protocol, Dr. Sarah Chen, she never stopped working on it. She's refined the treatment, made it better. With proper funding and resources, we could have it ready for clinical trials within months. Months? Catherine's voice cracked. Tommy needs help now. I know, Alexander said softly. That's why I've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I'm going to tell them everything. We're going to fast-track this project, whatever it takes. Catherine sank into a chair, her anger giving way to exhaustion. How did you even find out about this now, after all these years? Alexander thought of Lily, her ancient eyes and impossible knowledge. Someone reminded me that some things are more important than profit margins. He moved to the window, watching his reflection overlay the city lights. I've spent years building this company, Catherine, making it more profitable, more powerful. I thought that's what success looked like. And now? Now I understand that true success isn't measured in quarterly reports or stock prices. He turned back to face her. Will you come to the board meeting tomorrow? They should hear from Tommy's mother too. Catherine studied him for a long moment. You really think you can push this through? Against the board's wishes? I own controlling interest in the company, Alexander said firmly. And for the first time in years, I'm going to use that power for something that actually matters. The next morning, Alexander stood before the Sterling Pharmaceuticals board of directors, Catherine at his side. The presentation screen behind him displayed the Project Helios data, while copies of Dr. Chen's updated research sat before each board member. 7 years ago, we made a decision based solely on financial projections, he began. We looked at spreadsheets and market analyses, but we failed to see the human cost of our choice. Today, we're going to correct that mistake. Richard Blackwood, the eldest board member, cleared his throat. Alexander, while the situation with your son is tragic, we can't let personal matters cloud our business judgment. The financial realities haven't changed. Actually, they have, Alexander countered, clicking to the next slide. Dr. Chen's continued research shows that the treatment protocol could be adapted for a wider range of neurological conditions. The potential market is 10 times what we originally projected. He clicked again, revealing another chart. But more importantly, we're going to change how we evaluate projects like this. From now on, Sterling Pharmaceuticals will maintain a division dedicated to developing treatments for rare conditions, regardless of profit potential. A murmur of protest rose from the board members. The shareholders will never accept that, someone argued. They will, Alexander said confidently, because we're going to show them that doing the right thing is good business. We're going to tell them about Project Helios, about Dr. Chen's work, and about all the lives we can save. And then we're going to ask them a simple question. What's the value of a child's life? The Hope Medical Clinic buzzed with unusual activity as Sterling Pharmaceuticals equipment was moved into the newly renovated research wing. Dr. Sarah Chen directed the placement of each piece with meticulous attention to detail, her tired eyes shining with renewed purpose. In just 2 weeks, Alexander had transformed the small clinic into a state-of-the-art research facility. The preliminary trials could begin as early as next month, Sarah explained as she led Alexander through the lab. We'll need to start with a small test group, carefully monitored. Tommy should be first, Alexander interrupted, then immediately regretted his words when he saw Sarah's expression harden. Every child here deserves a chance, Mr. Sterling, she said firmly. We'll select test subjects based on medical criteria, not personal connection. He nodded, properly chastised. You're right, of course. I'm sorry. He looked around the lab, seeing the photos of children that Sarah had posted on one wall, faces full of hope despite their conditions. How many could we potentially help? Initially, maybe a dozen, but once we prove the treatment's effectiveness and get FDA approval, thousands. She turned to face him directly. That's why we have to do this right. No shortcuts, no special favors, even for your son. The mention of Tommy sent Alexander's hand to his pocket, where he kept the photo Lily had examined. He hadn't seen the mysterious girl since that morning at the carousel, though he'd looked for her every time he visited the clinic. Where is Lily today? He asked, trying to sound casual. A small smile played at Sarah's lips. She has that effect on people, makes them question what they thought they knew about the world. She knew things she couldn't possibly have known, Alexander said quietly. About Project Helios, about Tommy. Lily has always been special, Sarah replied, her voice soft with maternal pride. After we left Sterling Pharmaceuticals, after everything we lost, she was the one who kept me going, kept reminding me that the work was too important to abandon. Before Alexander could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Tommy's asking for you, he's having a good day. Go, Sarah said, reading his expression. The lab will still be here tomorrow. The pediatric ward at Memorial Children's Hospital had become as familiar to Alexander as his own office. He knew every nurse by name, could navigate the corridors blindfolded. Today, though, something felt different. There was an energy in the air, a sense of possibility he hadn't felt in months. Tommy was sitting up in bed when Alexander entered, a comic book spread across his lap. His face lit up at the sight of his father. "Dad, Dr. Phillips said I'm getting stronger." Alexander's heart swelled as he took in his son's bright eyes and genuine smile. "That's fantastic, buddy. I knew you had it in you." Catherine sat in her usual chair by the window, her expression softer than it had been in weeks. "His latest test showed improvement," she said, "small but definite." Alexander settled into the chair on the other side of Tommy's bed, carefully avoiding the IV lines. "Hey, champ, how would you feel about trying a new treatment? Something special that might help you get even stronger?" Tommy's eyes widened. "Like a superhero serum?" Alexander laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "Something like that. A very smart doctor named Dr. Chen has been working on it for a long time." "Will it make me better?" The hope in his son's voice made Alexander's throat tight. "We're going to try our very best, but you have to be brave, okay, and patient. These things take time." "I'm always brave," Tommy declared, puffing out his chest. "Like Superman." "Braver than Superman," Alexander agreed, ruffling his son's hair. He caught Catherine's eye over Tommy's head, saw the mixture of hope and fear in her expression. They both knew there were no guarantees, but for the first time, in months, they had something more substantial than desperate prayers to hold on to. Later that evening, as Tommy slept peacefully, Alexander stood by the window watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. He thought about all the other parents in the hospital, all the other children fighting their own battles. The weight of his past decisions pressed heavy on his conscience, but with it came a new sense of purpose. "Sometimes," a familiar voice said behind him, "the greatest gifts come wrapped in our greatest challenges." Alexander turned to find Lily, standing in the doorway, her blue dress seeming to shimmer in the fading light. "How do you always know where to find me?" She smiled, that ancient, knowing smile. "The same way I knew you'd make the right choice once you remembered what really matters." The day of the first clinical trial dawned bright and clear. Alexander paced the halls of the Hope Medical Clinic, his usual composed demeanor betraying hints of nervous energy. Dr. Chen had selected 12 children for the initial test group, each chosen based on strict medical criteria. Tommy, by pure medical necessity rather than privilege, was among them. The newly renovated treatment room hummed with activity as nurses and technicians prepared equipment and checked medication doses. Dr. Chen moved from station to station, her movements precise and focused, double-checking every detail. The weight of responsibility was visible in the set of her shoulders, but her eyes shone with determination. "Everything is ready," she announced, turning to address the gathered parents. "We'll begin with the first 3 patients in 15 minutes." Alexander watched as Catherine helped Tommy settle into one of the treatment chairs. Their son's face showed a mixture of excitement and apprehension, his Superman comic clutched tightly in his hands. "Is it going to hurt?" Tommy whispered, his brave facade cracking slightly. "Just a little pinch," Dr. Chen said, approaching with a warm smile. "And you know what? We've got something special for you today." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small red cape. "Your dad mentioned you're a Superman fan." Tommy's eyes lit up as she draped the cape around his shoulders. "Cool. Mom, Dad, look." Alexander felt Catherine's hand slip into his, squeezing tightly. It was the first time she'd initiated contact since their divorce. He glanced at her and saw tears shining in her eyes, though her expression remained hopeful. "The treatment protocol will take approximately 4 hours," Dr. Chen explained to the parents. "We'll be monitoring vital signs continuously, and I'll provide updates every 30 minutes. If at any point you have questions or concerns, our staff is here to help." As the first round of treatments began, Alexander noticed a familiar figure standing in the doorway. Lily watched the proceedings with her usual intense gaze, her blue dress standing out against the clinical white of the hospital walls. "You're worried," she said when he approached her. "Shouldn't I be?" Lily's lips curved in a slight smile. Hope is stronger than fear, Mr. Sterling. Remember that. Before he could respond, one of the monitors began beeping rapidly. Dr. Chen rushed to Tommy's side, checking readings and adjusting equipment. Alexander's heart leaped into his throat, but then he heard something that made him freeze. Laughter. Tommy was giggling, his face flushed with color. "Her tickles," he exclaimed. "Mom, Dad, it feels like bubbles under my skin." Dr. Chen's face broke into a genuine smile as she checked his vital signs. "That's exactly what it should feel like, Tommy. The medicine is starting to work." Over the next 4 hours, Alexander watched as each child received the treatment. Some reported the same tickling sensation, others felt warmth or mild tingling. Most importantly, all vital signs remained stable, and preliminary readings showed positive cellular responses. "The real test will be the next few days," Dr. Chen explained as the last treatment concluded. "We'll need to monitor everyone closely for side effects and track any improvements in their conditions." Catherine had fallen asleep in the chair beside Tommy's treatment station, exhaustion finally overtaking her anxiety. Tommy, still wearing his Superman cape, was engrossed in a new comic book that one of the nurses had brought him. "He looks stronger already," Lily said, suddenly beside Alexander again. "Is that your special insight talking?" he asked only, half joking. She shook her head. "Just my eyes. Look at his color, his energy, but more importantly, look at his spirit. He believes he can get better now. Sometimes that's half the battle." Alexander studied his son, seeing what Lily meant. There was a new light in Tommy's eyes, a spark that had been missing for too long. Whether it was the treatment or simply the hope it represented, something had changed. "You know," Lily continued, her voice taking on that ageless quality that still unnerved him, "this is just the beginning. What happens here today will ripple out far beyond these walls." "What do you mean?" "Other companies will see what Sterling Pharmaceuticals is doing. They'll realize that helping people and making profits aren't mutually exclusive. Change starts with one decision, one moment of choosing right over easy." Alexander thought about the board meeting scheduled for the next day, where he would present the preliminary results of the trial. He'd already drafted a proposal to establish a permanent rare disease research division, funded by a percentage of the company's annual profits. "My father used to say that true legacy isn't measured in dollars," he said quietly. "I never really understood what he meant until now." "Understanding is the first step," Lily replied. "Action is the second. You've taken both." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Sterling, watch Tommy's left hand tomorrow morning. The tremors that have bothered him for months, they're about to stop." The Sterling Pharmaceuticals boardroom buzzed with an energy Alexander had never felt before. The quarterly financial reports still sat in their usual places, but for once, they weren't the center of attention. Instead, all eyes were fixed on the preliminary data from Project Helios's first trial. "The results are remarkable," Dr. Chen explained, her usual reserved demeanor brightened by excitement. "All 12 patients showed measurable improvement in cellular markers within 24 hours. More importantly, we're seeing significant reduction in neurological symptoms." She clicked to the next slide, showing a series of brain scans. These images show decreased inflammation in key areas, and this, she clicked again, is the mobility data. Patient 7 went from grade 4 tremors to grade 1 in just 48 hours. Alexander watched the board members' reactions. Even Richard Blackwood, his staunchest opponent, leaned forward with interest. The numbers were impossible to ignore. "What about side effects?" someone asked. "Minimal," Dr. Chen replied. "Some patients reported mild fatigue and temporary sensitivity to light, but all symptoms resolved within hours. We're continuing to monitor closely, but so far the safety profile is exceptional." Alexander stood, moving to the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing isn't just a medical breakthrough. It's a paradigm shift. Project Helios proves that focusing on rare diseases isn't just ethically right, it's good business." He clicked to a new slide, revealing a comprehensive plan for the company's future. "I'm proposing the establishment of a permanent rare disease research division with Dr. Chen as its director. Initial funding will come from 15% of our annual profits, with potential for expansion based on results. A murmur ran through the room. 15% was a significant commitment. Furthermore, Alexander continued, we're going to change how we evaluate potential projects. Return on investment will no longer be the only criterion. We'll also consider social impact, medical necessity, and long-term humanitarian benefits. Richard Blackwood cleared his throat. Alexander, while these results are impressive, we have a responsibility to our shareholders. Yes, we do, Alexander agreed. And I believe our shareholders will support this initiative when they see the full picture. He gestured to his assistant, who distributed a new set of documents. Our marketing team has already received inquiries from major media outlets wanting to cover Project Helios. The public response to our rare disease initiative has been overwhelming. He clicked to another slide showing social media metrics and press coverage. Our company's public approval rating has increased by 40% since we announced the revival of Project Helios. 3 major pension funds have expressed interest in increasing their investment specifically because of our new ethical stance. The boardroom fell silent as the implications sank in. Alexander pressed his advantage. The world is changing. People want companies that do more than just generate profits. They want companies that make a difference. Later that afternoon, Alexander sat in his office, processing the board's unanimous approval of his proposals. His phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Tommy just walked the entire hospital corridor without assistance. First time in months. The doctors can't believe it. Attached was a video of Tommy, still wearing his Superman cape, taking steady steps down the hospital hallway. His left hand, which had trembled uncontrollably for months, was stable enough to give a thumbs up to the camera. I told you to watch his left hand. Lily's voice came from the doorway. She entered without waiting for an invitation, settling into one of the leather chairs across from his desk. How do you do that? Alexander asked. How do you always know? The same way I knew you'd make the right choice about Project Helios, she replied. The same way I know that right now in a hospital in Chicago, a doctor is reading about your company's breakthrough and thinking about her own patient who needs help. The same way I know that next week, another pharmaceutical company will announce their own rare disease initiative, not wanting to be left behind. She stood and walked to the window, her reflection overlaying the city skyline. Change is like a stone thrown into still water, Mr. Sterling. The ripples spread far beyond the initial impact. Alexander joined her at the window. Your mother said you've always been special, that you see things others don't. Everyone sees, Lily corrected. Not everyone chooses to look. You've started looking now, haven't you? Seeing beyond the spreadsheets and profit margins? He thought about Tommy walking down that hospital corridor, about the other children in the trial showing similar improvements. He thought about Dr. Chen's renewed passion for her work, about the board members' genuine enthusiasm for the new direction. 1 month after the initial trial, the Hope Medical Clinic had transformed from a modest facility into a beacon of hope. Families from across the country sought information about Project Helios, and Dr. Chen's research team had expanded to handle the growing number of cases. The clinic's walls, once stark and clinical, now displayed colorful artwork created by the young patients, their improving motor skills evident in each new drawing. Alexander stood in the clinic's new family waiting area, watching as Tommy helped another young patient with a puzzle. His son's movements were steady, deliberate, showing none of the tremors that had plagued him for so long. The Superman cape, now a regular part of his wardrobe, had inspired other children to adopt their own superhero personas. He's becoming quite the leader, Dr. Chen observed, joining Alexander at the window. The other children look up to him. He gets that from his mother, Alexander smiled, thinking of Catherine's natural ability to inspire others. Their relationship had evolved over the past month, the shared joy of Tommy's improvement healing old wounds. The second round of trials begins next week, Dr. Chen continued, handing him a tablet with the latest data. We've refined the protocol based on our observations. The results are even more promising than we initially hoped. Alexander scrolled through the reports, noting the impressive statistics. And the FDA? Fast-tracking our application, your presentation to the Congressional Committee made quite an impression. She paused, studying his face. You've changed, you know. The Alexander Sterling I knew 7 years ago wouldn't have spent hours testifying about the importance of accessible medical treatment. Before he could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A group of visitors was being led through the clinic. Representatives from 3 other major pharmaceutical companies come to observe Project Helios firsthand. Your daughter was right, Alexander mused. The ripples are spreading. Sarah's expression softened at the mention of Lily. She has that effect on people, makes them see possibilities they never considered before. The visiting executives moved through the clinic, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest as they witnessed the patient's progress. Alexander recognized the look in their eyes, the same realization he'd had, that success could be measured in more than just dollars and cents. Mr. Sterling, a small voice interrupted his thoughts. One of the younger patients, a girl named Emma, tugged at his sleeve. Can you help me hang my picture? It's for the celebration wall. The celebration wall had become a tradition at the clinic, a place where patients posted artwork marking their improvements. Emma's drawing showed a group of children flying, their hospital gowns transformed into superhero capes. Of course, Alexander smiled, lifting her up so she could pin the picture, at exactly the right spot. Tell me about your drawing. That's Tommy. She pointed to a figure in a red cape. And that's me and that's Billy from room 4. We're all getting stronger together. She beamed up at him. My hands don't shake anymore when I draw. Alexander felt a familiar presence before he saw her. Lily stood near the celebration wall, her blue dress somehow both out of place and perfectly fitting in the clinical setting. The best medicines aren't always the ones that come in bottles, she said softly as he approached. Sometimes they're found in hope and friendship and the belief that things can change. You knew this would happen, Alexander said. Not really a question. Not just Tommy's recovery, but all of it. The other companies following our lead, the policy changes. Lily's smile held its usual mysterious quality. I knew you would remember who you were meant to be. The rest followed naturally. She touched one of the drawings on the wall. Every child here has a story, Mr. Sterling. Just like Tommy's, just like mine. The difference is now these stories have a chance at happy endings. A burst of laughter drew their attention. Tommy had organized some kind of game with the other children, all of them wearing various superhero accessories that had become common sights in the clinic. Your father would be proud, Lily said unexpectedly. He always believed the Sterling name should stand for more than just profits. Alexander started. How did you know about my father? The same way I know that tomorrow morning you'll receive a call from the Gates Foundation about partnering on a global rare disease initiative. The same way I know that next month, a researcher in Sweden will build on Dr. Chen's work to develop a treatment for another rare condition. She met his gaze directly. The same way I know that right now, you're finally understanding what real success looks like. She was right. Looking around the clinic, at the children, playing, the parents whose faces now held hope instead of desperation, the visiting executives taking notes and making plans, Alexander felt a sense of accomplishment that no quarterly report had ever given him. The autumn air carried a crisp freshness as Alexander walked through Central Park, retracing the path to the carousel where everything had changed. The vintage attraction stood silent in the early morning light, its painted horses frozen in their eternal gallop. Tommy walked beside him, his steps strong and steady, no trace of the weakness that had confined him to a hospital bed just months ago. Is this where you met her, Dad? Tommy asked, running his hand along one of the carousel horses. The girl who told you about Dr. Chen's medicine? Right here, Alexander confirmed, remembering that misty morning that felt both recent and impossibly distant. She was standing right where you are now. Tommy considered this, his face thoughtful. You know what's weird? When I was really sick, I had these dreams about a girl in a blue dress. She would tell me stories about kids who got better, about doctors finding special medicines to help them. He looked up at his father. Do you think it was the same girl? Alexander felt a familiar electric sensation in the air. Why don't you ask her yourself? Lily emerged from behind the carousel, her blue dress catching the morning light. Tommy showed no surprise at her appearance, as if he'd been expecting her all along. Hello, Tommy, she said softly. I like your cape. Tommy grinned, adjusting the red fabric that had become his trademark. Did you really help my dad find Dr. Chen's medicine? Your dad already knew where to find it, Lily replied. He just needed to remember what was truly important. She turned to Alexander. The board meeting went well yesterday? Unanimous approval for the global expansion, he nodded. We're partnering with research facilities in 12 countries. Dr. Chen will oversee the international program, while continuing her work at the clinic. And the other companies? 4 more major pharmaceuticals have announced rare disease initiatives. The industry is changing just like you said it would. He paused, studying her ageless face. But you already knew that, didn't you? Lily's smile held secrets he was beginning to understand. Knowledge isn't the same as wisdom, Mr. Sterling. You had to choose to use what you knew in the right way. Tommy had wandered a few steps away, examining the intricate carvings on the carousel. Dad, look! This horse has the same pattern as the one in my dream. Alexander started to respond, but Lily touched his arm, holding him back. Let him remember on his own, she said softly. Some truths are better discovered than told. Who are you really? Alexander asked, voicing the question that had haunted him for months. I'm someone who sees what could be, she replied. Just like you're someone who remembers what should be, just like Tommy is someone who shows others what can be. She gestured to where Tommy was now explaining something excitedly to another child who had wandered near the carousel. Watch. The other child, Alexander noticed, walked with a slight tremor, similar to how Tommy had been before the treatment. As he watched, his son pulled off his cape and draped it around the other child's shoulders. Sometimes, Tommy was saying, when you're sick, you have to be extra brave, like Superman, but you don't have to be brave alone. The other child's parent hurried over, apologizing for the interruption, but Alexander recognized the look in their eyes, the desperate hope of someone searching for answers. Actually, he said, reaching for his business card, I'd like to tell you about a special clinic we've established. We're starting a new trial phase next month. When he turned back, Lily was gone, but her presence lingered like the morning mist around the carousel. Tommy returned to his side, somehow unsurprised by her disappearance. She's not really gone, you know, Tommy said matter-of-factly. She's just helping other people remember important things, like she helped you. Alexander looked at his son, seeing wisdom in his young face that reminded him of Lily's ancient eyes. What kind of important things? That being rich isn't just about money, Tommy replied, and that sometimes the best medicine isn't medicine at all. He took his father's hand. Can we go visit the clinic? I promised Emma I'd help her with her new art project. Winter had transformed the city into a wonderland of white, but inside the Hope Medical Clinic, warmth and activity flourished. The halls buzzed with excitement as preparations were made for the holiday celebration, an event that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Children who had once been confined to wheelchairs now helped hang decorations, their movements strong and coordinated. Catherine stood in the clinic's main reception area, directing volunteers as they transformed the space. Her relationship with the clinic had evolved from that of a worried parent to an active advocate. She'd left her corporate job to work full-time as the clinic's outreach coordinator, using her marketing expertise to help other families find their way to Project Helios. The Swedish research team arrives tomorrow, she told Alexander as he entered, shaking snow from his coat. Dr. Chen wants you to meet with them first thing. Already scheduled, he nodded, watching as Tommy and Emma organized other children into what appeared to be a makeshift choir. How's the performance coming along? Catherine's eyes softened as she watched their son. They've been practicing all week. Tommy insisted everyone should have a part, even the new patients who just started treatment. The clinic's holiday celebration had become more than just a party. It was a symbol of hope, a way to mark how far they'd come. Families who had once lived in isolation, dealing with their children's conditions alone, had found a community here. "Have you seen her lately?" Catherine asked quietly, knowing Alexander would understand who she meant. He shook his head. "Not since that day at the carousel. But sometimes..." He hesitated, not sure how to explain the moments when he felt Lily's presence, in the laughter of the children, in the breakthrough announcements from the research team, in the small miracles that seemed to happen daily at the clinic. "Tommy talks about her, you know," Catherine said. "He says she visits him in his dreams, tells him stories about other children who need help. Last week, he insisted we check on a new patient who hadn't been responding well to treatment. Turns out, the doctors had missed an important drug interaction." Before Alexander could respond, Dr. Chen emerged from her office, her face bright with excitement. "The results from the international trials just came in," she announced, holding up a tablet. "The success rate is even higher than our initial tests. The Swedish team has already identified 3 additional conditions that might respond to modified versions of the protocol." Alexander took the tablet, scanning the data. The numbers were impressive, but what caught his attention were the photographs. Children from around the world, their transformations documented in before and after images that told stories of hope and healing. "We're going to need a bigger clinic," he mused, already mentally calculating space requirements and staffing needs. "Actually," Dr. Chen smiled, "that's what I wanted to discuss with you. The old Riverside Hospital building is up for sale. With some renovation, it could be perfect for our needs." The suggestion sparked an immediate vision in Alexander's mind. The abandoned hospital had been a landmark in the city for decades, its prime location and historic architecture wasted by years of neglect. It would take significant investment to bring it up to modern standards. "The returns would be worth it," a familiar voice said. Lily stood near the clinic's Christmas tree, her blue dress somehow perfectly suited to the festive decorations around her. "The building has good bones," she continued, as if discussing real estate were perfectly normal for a mysterious child. "More importantly, it has the right spirit. Hospitals shouldn't feel like places of sadness. They should be places of hope and healing." Tommy, spotting Lily, ran over to join them. "Did you tell them about the garden yet?" he asked her excitedly. "Garden?" Alexander questioned. "On the roof," Lily explained. "The Riverside building has a perfect space for it. The children could grow their own flowers and vegetables. Being close to growing things helps people heal faster." Dr. Chen was already making notes on her tablet. "A therapeutic garden program could be incredibly beneficial. We could incorporate it into physical therapy routines, use it to help patients regain fine motor skills. And it would be beautiful," Tommy added, "like having a piece of spring, all year round." Alexander found himself imagining it. The old hospital transformed into a place of light and hope, with a rooftop garden where children could feel the sun on their faces and watch things grow. The cost would be substantial, but as Lily had taught him, some investments couldn't be measured in dollars and cents. "We could call it the Phoenix Center," Catherine suggested, "since it's about transformation and new beginnings." The answers. "We seek often come from unexpected places," Lily said softly. "Sometimes it takes a child's eyes to see the possibilities that adults have forgotten to look for." She touched the Christmas tree, and for a moment, Alexander could have sworn the lights glowed a bit brighter. "The world changes one choice at a time, Mr. Sterling. One person remembering to look beyond the surface, one company choosing compassion over profit, one child showing others that healing is possible." Spring arrived early that year, as if nature itself was eager to participate in the transformation taking place at the Riverside building. The renovation project had become a symbol of hope for the entire city, with local businesses and community groups joining forces to support the creation of the Phoenix Center. Alexander stood in what would become the rooftop garden, watching as landscape architects discussed plans with Dr. Chen and a surprisingly knowledgeable Tommy. His son had taken a keen interest in the garden's design, insisting on specific plants and layouts that he claimed had come to him in dreams. The lavender. Should go here, Tommy was saying, pointing to a sunny corner. It helps people feel calm, and some of the kids get nervous before treatments. Dr. Chen made notes, treating Tommy's suggestions with the same seriousness she gave to medical consultants. Over the past months, she'd learned to trust these seemingly random insights, which often proved remarkably beneficial to the patients. The Swedish team's results came in, she told Alexander as Tommy continued his garden planning. The modified protocol is showing remarkable success with 3 new conditions. They're calling it the Sterling Chen protocol now. Alexander shook his head, still amazed by how far they'd come. It should just be the Chen protocol. You did all the work. You made it possible, she countered. Sometimes the most important breakthroughs come not from the research itself, but from someone being willing to support it against all business logic. A flash of blue caught Alexander's eye. Lily stood by the rooftop's edge, looking out over the city. She turned to smile at him, and he was struck again by the ageless wisdom in her eyes. The garden will help more than just the patients, she said as he joined her. It will remind everyone who works here that healing comes in many forms. Like mysterious girls who appear just when they're needed, Alexander suggested. Lily's laugh was like wind chimes in a spring breeze. Hope is the most powerful medicine, Mr. Sterling. Sometimes it just needs a little help finding its way to where it's needed most. Tommy ran over to them, his face flushed with excitement. Dad, Dr. Chen says we can have a butterfly garden too. Emma's mom knows all about attracting monarchs, and she says they migrate right through here in the fall. Butterflies are perfect symbols for this place, Lily observed. They remind us that transformation is natural, that becoming something new doesn't mean losing who you are. Alexander watched as more workers arrived on the roof, carrying plants and building materials. The Phoenix Center was taking shape faster than he'd expected, as if the project had a momentum of its own. Local media had picked up the story, leading to an outpouring of community support. Other pharmaceutical companies had reached out about partnerships, and medical schools were requesting internship programs. It's more than just a medical facility now, Catherine said, joining them with cups of coffee. She handed one to Alexander, their fingers brushing in a way that felt comfortable, familiar. It's becoming a model for what healthcare could be. Should be, Lily corrected gently. The world is ready for change, Mr. Sterling. People are remembering that business success and human compassion aren't mutually exclusive. Tommy had returned to directing the garden layout, his Superman cape fluttering in the spring breeze. Other children from the clinic, those strong enough to visit the construction site, followed him around in their own superhero gear, adding their ideas to the plans. You know, Catherine said thoughtfully, I used to worry about what Tommy would become after being sick for so long. I was afraid it would change him. It did change him, Lily said. It changed all of you, but not all changes are losses. Sometimes they're gifts in disguise, teaching us what we need to know for the next part of our journey. Alexander looked at his son, remembering the frightened boy in the hospital bed, and saw instead a confident young leader who had turned his own struggles into a way to help others. He thought about his own transformation, from a profit-focused executive to someone who measured success in smiles and small victories. The garden needs a special spot, Lily announced suddenly. A place for stories. Stories? Catherine asked. Every person who comes here has a story, Lily explained. Stories of struggle and hope, of fear and courage. They need a place to share these stories, to let them become part of the garden's growth. Summer bloomed in full force as the Phoenix Center's rooftop garden took shape. What had started as Tommy's dream had evolved into a magnificent healing space, with winding paths, quiet corners, and bursts of color from carefully chosen flowers. The story circle, as it had come to be known, occupied the heart of the garden, a peaceful alcove surrounded by climbing roses and comfortable benches. Alexander sat there now, watching as a young patient named Marcus shared his story with a group of new arrivals. The boy's hands, once too shaky to hold a pencil, now gestured confidently as he described his journey through the Sterling Chen protocol. It was scary at first, Marcus was saying, but then Tommy let me borrow his Superman cape for my first treatment. He said it was magic, that it helped him get stronger, and it would help me too. The cape lending had become a tradition at the Phoenix Center. Tommy's original red cape had inspired an entire collection, each worn and passed on by successful patients to newcomers. The simple gesture carried more healing power than anyone could have predicted. "The garden exceeds my expectations," Dr. Chen said, joining Alexander on one of the benches. "The therapeutic benefits are remarkable. Blood pressure levels, stress markers, even immune responses, all show improvement when patients spend time here." "It's more than just the plants," a familiar voice observed. Lily appeared beside them, her blue dress rippling in the warm breeze. "It's the stories that take root here, growing alongside the flowers." She was right. Every corner of the garden held memories. The lavender patch where Emma had taken her first steps without assistance, the butterfly garden where shy patients found their voices, the herb section where children learned to grow healing plants of their own. "The Swedish team arrives tomorrow," Dr. Chen continued, long accustomed to Lily's mysterious comings and goings. "They're bringing preliminary results from their latest trials. The protocol's applications keep expanding." Alexander nodded, remembering the latest statistics. The Sterling Chen protocol had now been adapted to treat 15 different conditions, with research ongoing into many more. The Phoenix Center had become a global model, with similar facilities opening in cities around the world. "Dad," Tommy's voice carried across the garden. "Come quick, Jack's telling his story." Alexander followed his son's call to find a small crowd gathered near the butterfly garden. Jack, a recent patient who had barely spoken when he arrived, stood in the center wearing what Alexander recognized as Tommy's latest cape, a deep blue one with silver stars. "I thought I was the only one," Jack was saying softly. "The only kid who couldn't run or play normally. But then I came here and met all of you. And I learned about the girl in the blue dress who helps people find their way." Alexander glanced at Lily, who smiled her enigmatic smile. More and more often he heard patients mention her, dreams of a wise child who offered comfort, whispered encouragement, or simply sat with them during difficult moments. "Stories have power," Lily said, as if reading his thoughts. "They remind us we're not alone. They give us courage to face what seems impossible." Catherine appeared with a tray of lemonade, passing cups to the gathered patients and families. Her presence in the garden had become as natural as the sunlight, her corporate suits replaced by casual clothes, better suited to gardening and storytelling. "The support group starts in 10 minutes, she reminded everyone. "Today's theme is unexpected gifts, sharing the surprising blessings we've found in our challenges." As the crowd began to move toward the story circle, Alexander noticed a new family hovering uncertainly near the garden entrance. Their daughter, barely older than Tommy had been when his journey began, clutched a stuffed animal and watched the other children with longing. Tommy spotted them too. He approached the girl with the gentle confidence he'd developed over the past months. "Hi, I'm Tommy. Want me to show you the butterflies? We just got some new chrysalises. They'll be hatching soon." "Transformation always looks impossible until it happens," Lily mused, watching as the new girl slowly emerged from her shell, drawn into Tommy's enthusiastic explanation of the butterfly garden. "Like caterpillars that can't imagine having wings." Alexander thought about his own transformation, from a man who measured success in profit margins to one who found it in moments like these. "You knew all along, didn't you? Not just about the protocol, but about all of this." "I knew the possibilities," Lily corrected, "but possibilities only become real when people choose to believe in them, when they're brave enough to challenge what seems impossible." The Phoenix Center's main atrium buzzed with excitement as families gathered for the quarterly celebration. What had started as a small holiday party had evolved into a beloved tradition, marking milestones and welcoming new patients. Children who had once been confined to wheelchairs now danced and played, their progress a testament to the power of hope and determination. Alexander stood at the edge of the crowd, watching as Tommy organized games and activities with the natural leadership that continued to amaze him. His son had grown not just in health but in spirit. turning his own experience into a way to help others. "He reminds me of you," Catherine said, joining him with 2 cups of punch. "The way you used to be, before the corporate world hardened you, and now the way you are again." Their relationship had evolved too, the bitterness of their divorce softened by shared purpose and renewed understanding. They work together seamlessly now, their combined strengths making the Phoenix Center stronger. "The board approved the expansion plans," Alexander told her. 3 new centers opening next year, London, Singapore, and Cape Town. Dr. Chen will oversee the implementation of the protocol at each location. "And the garden program?" "Required at each site. Tommy's already sketching ideas for the London layout." He smiled, remembering his son's detailed plans. "He says each garden needs to reflect its location while maintaining the core healing elements." A burst of laughter drew their attention. Emma, one of the first protocol patients, was teaching new arrivals the superhero dance, a tradition that had started spontaneously during a treatment session and now served as a way to welcome newcomers. "Sometimes I wonder," Catherine mused, "if we would have found our way here without her, without Lily." As if summoned by her name, the mysterious girl appeared near the Christmas tree that remained up year-round, decorated with paper cranes made by patients. Her blue dress seemed to shimmer in the light. "Every journey has guides," she said, approaching them, "but the choices were always yours to make." Tommy spotted her and rushed over, cape flying behind him. "Lily, did you see? Jack took his first steps without crutches today." "I saw," she smiled, "and I saw how you helped him believe he could do it." The celebration continued around them, a tapestry of joy and hope woven from countless individual stories. Dr. Chen moved through the crowd, her face bright as she greeted families and checked on patients' progress. The Swedish research team, in town for another collaboration meeting, watched in amazement as children they'd only seen in medical files demonstrated their recovery through dance and play. "The protocol is just part of the healing," Lily observed. "Sometimes the medicine that matters most is knowing you're not alone, having someone believe in you when you've forgotten how to believe in yourself." Alexander thought about that morning at the carousel, when he'd been lost in despair until a mysterious child reminded him of what truly mattered. He thought about Tommy in his hospital bed, drawing strength from superhero stories and dreams of a girl in blue who promised better days ahead. "The next phase of trials begins tomorrow," he said. "The new variant of the protocol shows promise for treating even more conditions." "The ripples keep spreading," Lily nodded, "like circles in a pond, touching lives you'll never even know about." A small commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A new family had arrived. Parents with the shell-shocked look Alexander remembered from his own early days, their child in a wheelchair, much like Tommy's had been. Without hesitation, Tommy approached them, his manner gentle and understanding. "Hi, I'm Tommy. Want to see something cool? We've got a garden upstairs with real butterflies, and there's a cape with your name on it." "Your son," Lily said softly, "understands something many adults forget. That healing isn't just about getting better. It's about helping others find their way through the dark." Catherine wiped tears from her eyes as she watched Tommy lead the new family toward the elevator, already telling them about the magical garden and the stories it held. "He's not just our son anymore, is he? He belongs to something bigger." "We all do," Lily replied. "That's what the Phoenix Center is really about. Not just healing bodies, but reminding people they're part of a larger story." Autumn painted Central Park in brilliant colors as Alexander walked toward the carousel, retracing steps that had changed his life 1 year ago. The morning mist wrapped around the vintage attraction, just as it had on that fateful day. This time, though, he wasn't alone in his despair. He was surrounded by purpose and hope. Tommy skipped ahead, his movements strong and fluid, no trace remaining of the illness that had once threatened to take everything. His Superman cape, the original one that had started the tradition, was carefully folded in his backpack. Today, it would find a new owner. "Do you think she'll be here?" Tommy asked, scanning the area around the carousel. "She has a way of appearing when she's needed," Alexander replied, thinking of all the times Lily had shown up at crucial moments over the past year. They didn't have to wait long. The mysterious girl emerged from the morning mist, her blue dress unchanged by the seasons. She smiled at them both, her ancient eyes twinkling with shared secrets. "It's time, isn't it?" she said, more a statement than a question. Tommy nodded, solemnly, pulling the red cape from his backpack. "I had another dream last night about a boy in Chicago who needs this more than I do now." Alexander marveled at how naturally his son had come to accept these prophetic dreams, these glimpses of other children in need that seemed to mirror Lily's own mysterious knowledge. "The Sterling Chen protocol is ready to launch in Chicago next month," he said. "The new facility there is already accepting patient applications, and the boy will be among the first," Lily confirmed. "Just like Tommy was here, the circle continues." They walked together to the carousel, its painted horses seeming to watch, them with knowing eyes. Tommy ran his hand along the same horse he'd identified months ago as the one from his dreams. "I understand more now," Alexander said quietly to Lily. "About why you came to me that day. It was never just about saving Tommy, was it?" "The best healing ripples outward," she replied. "One person helps another, who helps another, creating a chain of hope that spreads further than anyone could imagine." Tommy had been busy arranging his cape on one of the carousel horses, positioning it carefully as if setting the scene. "It needs to be here," he explained. "The boy in my dream will come to the carousel tomorrow morning. He'll find the cape and it will give him courage, just like it did for me." Alexander felt Catherine's presence before he saw her. She emerged from the morning mist like a character in a dream, carrying a box filled with papers. The final approval came through, she announced, her face glowing with triumph. "The World Health Organization is officially recognizing the Sterling Chen protocol as a standard treatment option. Insurance companies will have to cover it now. Which means more families will have access," Alexander added, thinking of all. The parents who had struggled to afford treatment for their children. No more choosing between medication and mortgages. "Money should never decide who gets to heal," Lily said softly. "You remembered that, Mr. Sterling. You helped others remember too." They stood together in the gentle autumn morning, watching as Tommy made final adjustments to his cape's position. The carousel horses seemed to glow in the early light, their painted eyes holding secrets of countless stories yet to unfold. "The Phoenix Center has become more than we ever imagined," Catherine mused. "It's not just a hospital anymore. It's a movement. Other companies are following our lead, starting their own rare disease programs." "Because they saw it was possible," Lily nodded. "Sometimes people just need to be shown a different way of measuring success." Alexander thought about the changes of the past year, in himself, in Tommy, in the entire pharmaceutical industry. What had started as a desperate father's journey had transformed into something that touched countless lives. "Will we see you again?" he asked Lily, already knowing she would soon disappear into the morning mist. "I'm never really gone," she smiled. "I'm in every story told in the garden, every cape passed from one child to another, every moment someone chooses hope over fear." She turned to Tommy. "And some people, like your son, learn to see what I see, the threads that connect all these stories together." Tommy beamed at her words, understanding flowing between them like a current of invisible energy. "I had another dream," he confided, "about a girl in London who's going to help design their healing garden. She already knows about the butterflies, even though she's never seen them." The Phoenix Center's rooftop garden sparkled with winter frost, but inside the greenhouse, spring bloomed eternal. Alexander walked through the climate-controlled space where patients tended to plants year-round, each flower and herb chosen for its healing properties, both medicinal and spiritual. Dr. Chen was giving a tour to representatives from a major pharmaceutical company, explaining how the garden program had become an integral part of the treatment protocol. "The physical activity of gardening helps with motor skills," she explained, "but it's more than that. Growing things gives patients a sense of purpose, of contributing to their own healing." "And the stories," Tommy added, appearing suddenly beside the group. "Don't forget about the stories." He'd grown taller over the past year, stronger not just in body, but in spirit. The cape he wore now was new, deep green with gold trim, designed for his role as the garden's young ambassador. "Ah yes, The story circle. Dr. Chen smiled. Would you like to show our guests? Tommy led the way to the heart of the greenhouse, where benches arranged in a circle surrounded a small fountain. The walls here were covered with photographs and handwritten notes, testimonials from patients and families whose lives had been transformed by the Sterling Chen protocol. Every person who comes here adds their story, Tommy explained to the visitors. Because sometimes the best medicine is knowing you're not alone. Alexander watched his son with pride, remembering the frightened boy in a hospital bed who now helped others find their courage. The changes went beyond physical healing. Tommy had developed an intuitive understanding of what other patients needed, often knowing exactly what to say or do to help them through difficult moments. He's quite remarkable, one of the visiting executives commented, the way he connects with the patients. He had a good teacher, Alexander replied, thinking of Lily. Though her visits had become less frequent, her influence remained strong in every aspect of the Phoenix Center. Catherine joined them, carrying architectural plans for the new London facility. The UK team sent their final proposals for the healing garden, she said. They've incorporated all of Tommy's suggestions. The lavender fields were his idea, Alexander explained to the visitors. He said they'll help calm the children before treatments, just like they do here. The executives exchanged impressed looks. The success of the Phoenix Center model had caught the attention of the entire medical industry. What had started as one father's desperate search for a cure had evolved into a revolution in patient care. Mr. Sterling, one of the executives began, our board is very interested in implementing similar programs in our facilities. The combination of cutting-edge medicine with this holistic approach to healing, it's unprecedented. Actually, it's very precedented, Tommy interjected, his voice carrying an echo of Lily's wisdom. People have known for ages that healing isn't just about medicine. Sometimes it's about having someone believe in you, or feeling the sun on your face, or watching a butterfly come out of its chrysalis. Alexander caught Catherine's eye, sharing a moment of amazement at their son's transformation. The illness that had once threatened to take everything from them had instead given them gifts they could never have imagined. The garden in London will be different from this one, Tommy continued, warming to his subject. It needs to feel like home for the children there. But the important parts will be the same. The story circle, the butterfly garden, the quiet places where people can remember who they are beyond their illness. A light snow had begun to fall outside the greenhouse windows, but inside life flourished. Patients worked at gardening stations, their movements growing stronger and more confident with each day. Parents who had arrived with despair in their eyes now shared coffee and hope in the comfort of the story circle. Your son speaks like someone much older, one of the executives observed. Alexander smiled, remembering Lily's ancient eyes. He's learned to see things that most people miss. We all have, really. The Phoenix Center taught, first, that healing isn't just about getting better. It's about becoming more fully ourselves. Tommy had moved to help a young patient transplant a seedling, his hands gentle as he demonstrated the proper technique. See, he was saying, you have to be careful with the roots but not afraid. Plants are stronger than they look, just like people. The grand opening of the London Phoenix Center dawned bright and clear, defying the city's typical grey skies. Alexander stood on the rooftop garden, remarkably similar yet unique to its New York counterpart, watching as the first group of patients and families explored their new healing space. Tommy moved through the crowd with practiced ease, wearing a special cape created for the occasion, royal blue with the Union Jack subtly incorporated into its design. He'd insisted on being here for the opening, saying he'd dreamed of a particular patient who would need his help today. The girl with the red hair, he'd told Alexander that morning. She doesn't believe in magic anymore. We have to help her remember. Now Alexander watched as his son approached a small girl with bright copper curls who stood apart from the crowd, her arms crossed defensively across her chest. Her parents hovered nearby, wearing the familiar expression of people trying desperately to hold on to hope. "Hi," Tommy said softly. "I'm Tommy. Want to see something amazing?" The girl regarded him suspiciously, but allowed herself to be led to a secluded corner of the garden where butterfly chrysalises hung in a protected enclosure. "These are about to hatch," Tommy explained, "just like the ones in my dream. The same dream where I saw you." Alexander couldn't hear the rest of their conversation, but he watched as the girl's defensive posture slowly relaxed, her expression shifting from skepticism to curiosity. By the time Tommy showed her the story circle, she was actually smiling. "He's becoming quite the healer himself," Lily's voice came from beside him. She stood near a rose bush that hadn't been there a moment ago, her blue dress catching the unusual London sunlight. "Not just of bodies," Alexander agreed. "He sees what people need the same way you do." "The same way you learned to," she corrected, "when you remembered to look with your heart instead of your spreadsheets." The London facility represented the newest evolution of the Phoenix Center model. The Sterling Chen protocol had been refined and expanded, now treating a wide range of conditions. But more than that, the holistic approach to healing, combining cutting-edge medicine with the therapeutic benefits of nature, community, and hope, had transformed the way the medical industry approached patient care. "Did you know it would come to this?" Alexander asked. "That day at the carousel, did you see all of this?" Lily smiled her enigmatic smile. "I saw possibilities, but possibilities only become real when people choose to believe in them. You chose to believe, Mr. Sterling. Then you helped others believe too." Across the garden, Tommy was now introducing the red-haired girl to other patients, her initial reluctance replaced by tentative enthusiasm. Her parents watched in amazement as their daughter, who had refused to engage with any previous treatment programs, began to open up. "She'll design gardens too, you know," Lily said softly. "In a few years, when the Phoenix Center opens in Dublin, her butterfly gardens will be even more magical than these." Catherine approached them, carrying a tablet with the latest data from the New York facility. She nodded to Lily without surprise. They'd all grown accustomed to the mysterious girl's appearances. "The new research results are incredible," she said. "The combination of the protocol and the therapeutic garden program is showing better outcomes than either approach alone." "Because healing isn't just one thing," Lily observed. "It's medicine and magic, science and stories, butterflies and brave hearts all working together." A commotion near the butterfly enclosure drew their attention. The first chrysalis was beginning to open, its timing so perfect it seemed orchestrated. Patients and families gathered to watch as a beautiful monarch butterfly emerged, its wings gradually expanding in the gentle sunlight. The red-haired girl stood transfixed, her hand clasped in Tommy's, all traces of her earlier skepticism gone. "It's magic," she whispered. "The best kind," Tommy agreed. "The kind that reminds us anything is possible." Alexander felt Catherine's hand slip into his, a gesture that had become natural again over the past year. They watched as their son, once so desperately ill, now helped another child find her way back to hope. "The world needed reminding," Lily said softly, "that some things are worth more than profits, that healing comes in many forms, that magic still exists if we only remember to look for it." Gentle breeze carried the scent of roses. The bush that hadn't been there before now bloomed with flowers that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Alexander turned to ask Lily about it, but she was already gone, leaving only a subtle sparkle in the air where she had stood. 1 year after the London opening, Alexander once again stood by the carousel in Central Park. The morning mist swirled around the vintage horses, just as it had on that first desperate morning that seemed both yesterday and a lifetime ago. Tommy was there too, but this time he wasn't alone. A group of children from the Phoenix Center accompanied them, each wearing their own unique cape. Among them was Jack, now strong enough to help younger patients with their exercises, and Emma, whose artwork decorated many of the center's walls. The red-haired girl from London was visiting, her garden designs already being incorporated into plans for new facilities around the world. "They're coming," Tommy said suddenly, his face lighting up with familiar intuition. Through the mist approached a family Alexander recognized from the patient applications he'd reviewed last week. Their son, held in his father's arms, showed symptoms similar to what Tommy had experienced 2 years ago. The father's face bore the same desperate hope Alexander remembered seeing in his own mirror. "Welcome," Tommy said, stepping forward with the quiet confidence he'd developed. "We've been waiting for you." The father looked startled. "How did you know we'd be here?" "The same way I knew to come here when I needed help," Alexander replied, catching a glimpse of blue out of the corner of his eye. "Sometimes help finds us in unexpected places." Tommy was already showing the new boy his collection of Superman comics, the same ones that had given him courage during his treatments. The other children gathered around, each sharing pieces of their own stories, their voices blending with the carousel's ancient music. Dr. Chen arrived with Catherine, carrying the final test results that would officially document what they'd all known in their hearts. The Sterling Chen protocol, combined with the Phoenix Center's holistic approach, had revolutionized the treatment of rare diseases. The World Health Organization is officially recommending our model as the new standard of care, Dr. Chen announced. Every major hospital will be required to incorporate therapeutic gardens and community support programs. "And the pharmaceutical industry?" the new father asked hesitantly. "Is changing," Alexander assured him. "The success of the Phoenix Centers has proven that doing good and doing well aren't mutually exclusive. More companies are redirecting resources to rare disease research every day." Catherine moved to comfort the boy's mother, who had begun to cry softly. "I know it seems overwhelming now," she said gently, "but you're not alone anymore. None of us are." "Look!" Tommy's voice rang out with excitement. The morning mist had begun to clear, revealing a stunning sight. Hundreds of butterflies, their wings catching the early light, dancing around the carousel. Among them, barely visible unless you knew where to look, was a figure in a blue dress. "Some people say the carousel is magical," Tommy told the new boy confidentially, "that if you believe hard enough, wishes really do come true here." Alexander watched as hope began to replace fear in the new family's eyes. He thought about all the lives touched by that first desperate morning, all the changes set in motion by a mysterious girl's wisdom and a father's love. The magic was always there. Lily's voice came softly, though only Alexander and Tommy seemed to hear it. In the love of parents for their children, in the courage of those who fight to heal, in the hearts of people who choose to believe in possibilities. As the butterflies danced and the carousel played its timeless melody, Alexander realized that some stories don't really end. They just change form, like caterpillars becoming butterflies, spreading their wings to touch more lives than anyone could imagine. "Ready to begin your journey?" Tommy asked the new boy, holding out a cape that sparkled with its own kind of magic. The boy reached out hesitantly, then with growing confidence. "Will you help me?" "We all will," Tommy promised, as the other children nodded in agreement. That's what the Phoenix Center is all about. Nobody heals alone.